Are you someone who is just getting into sewing, or you love to sew, but you have limited space to put up your sewing machine or store your sewing supplies? I'm Jan Howell, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create a compact sewing station and some great tips on sewing organization. If you're new to my channel, I'm all about showing you tips and tricks and ways to make your crafting and sewing experience a little easier, more efficient, and less stressful. I'd like to thank Craft for sponsoring this video. Not all of us have the luxury of having a big sewing studio or even a sewing and crafting room. Some of us live in apartments, some of us live in condos, some of us maybe don't even have a space to put a sewing machine. I have some tips for you that you can find a way to get out your machine, make it more efficient, and not be so stressful about having so many sewing supplies that can't get put away. You know the scenario where we bring out our sewing machine on our dining room table and we make up our projects and it just seems to last longer than we want. It stays on our dining room table for days, and when we want to put it away, we don't know where to put it away. It can really take away from your desire to even want to get any project out or sew again. I'll be sharing tips that even if you have a sewing room or a sewing space, that will help you stay organized and make your sewing a little more efficient. When you're sewing, there's 3 things that you're going to want to make some space for in the same area if you can. You'll be using a sewing machine, you'll be cutting the fabric out, and you'll be pressing. I suggest that you try to keep your sewing supplies in one place that can be movable and stored in maybe a closet or under the bed or something. Although I have a sewing and crafting space in my house, in my basement, I have set up a little sewing station in my dining room, on my dining room table, just to show you how it would look like if you are using a dining room table. Now you can get out a card table, you can get out an old desk, if you have a space in a spare room, there's lots of different options. So as you can see, I've placed my sewing machine just at the end of the table. And one thing that is really nice, and I have a tutorial showing you how to make one of these, is a sewing mat, a sewing machine mat. And it has pockets in the front that you can store all your basic sewing needs that you're going to need while you're sewing. And it's really quite easy to make. And what I love about this is you can move it anywhere that you need, and you can just fold it and put it away when you're finished. You'll need some kind of surface to press your fabric and iron on. There are several different options that I recommend. I love these wool mats. They come in all different sizes. Or another option that I like, and I use it quite often in my sewing room when I want to move to a different place on the table to press my fabric, and that is a little miniature ironing board. I like it. It's portable. You can put the legs down and store it. And I also have a tutorial showing you how to make a cover for these. I've had this quite a while and I use it a lot. The next essential thing that you'll be doing when you're sewing is cutting the fabric out. There are times when I come up to my dining room table if I'm working on a big project to use the full length of the table, because my space downstairs doesn't have a big of a surface as this does. I love using a rotary cutter and a ruler. It just makes cutting straight edges, binding, trims. I use it pretty much for every project. They are really quite inexpensive. Once you get one, they last a long time. And a good rotary cutter is almost essential in my viewpoint. So you'll want to set up, this is quite a large mat. I have one that's a lot smaller that you can put down, Or I have even small ones if you're into quilting and piecing smaller pieces together. There is a small rotating cutting mat that I like. So I have the 3 stations set up, and let's go over each one a little in detail, and I can give you some other options as well. Some things you'll need to consider when you're setting up your electrical supplies, your sewing machine, your iron, is to find something so you're not having cords all over and that you have a plug available. I've really liked this extension cord. It has a lot of plugs in it, as you can see, and a plug for your phone. You can turn it on or off, and you can get, as you can see, several plugs in here. And I just put that under my table or where I'm at, and you're good to go. So we've touched on this just a little bit about where to put your sewing machine. I've mentioned an old desk, an old table, a card table. I sewed on a card table for many years in my apartment. Be on the lookout at thrift stores or yard sales for something that will work for you, and it will show up. Another option that I have found available, and that would be really nice for those of you who have limited space, is to buy some kind of pre-made cabinets that are compact, that fold away, such as this Craft cabinet, and they can be really nice and work really well. And this particular model is affordable, and I'm going to go through the features of it right now. It has places for 65 spools of thread or bobbins right here in the back. It has a couple hooks on the side. It even has a light on the top that you can adjust and remove and place it somewhere else, which is pretty cool. Lighting is a big issue when we're talking about sewing. You'll want to have adequate lighting. It has its own outlet with a couple plugs and 2 USB cables, which is kind of cool. And this opens up. This is the space to put your sewing machine when you're putting everything away. It has a couple shelves to put your sewing supplies. I really like these plastic bins. That would be really great to put a lot of maybe some fabric pieces or other things. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to put all your sewing supplies in here, but you could put your supplies in another tote. And it has one cord that you'll need to plug in for the whole setup. Let me show you how it stores away. There are little rollers on the doors, and that's it. So when you set it up, just pull that down. These little things fit in there to hold it stable in place. My husband put this together for me. He said it was pretty easy to put together. They have great instructions, and he said it was quite durable. And you could move it around, put it away. Like I said, it's only this deep. So that could either be put in a closet real easily, or I have it right now in my TV room. So there's this option, and there's a lot of different options out there to fit your needs. I will put the link in the description below for this. It's already quite affordable, but I will put a link in the description below for a 30% off discount if you're interested. In my sewing room, I have an ironing station that I have created. Like I said before, sometimes I take my ironing pads to my table. I can move it around a little bit. So this is just a little cabinet I have in my sewing room, and I have placed my wool pad here. I love this little iron, by the way, for little projects. And I love this set. This is the medium mat, and it comes with a small mat. And it also came with a little bag that would be ideal if you don't have a space to keep it out all the time, is to put all 3 mats in this bag, and you could just slip it in your closet. So you may be wondering, what do I do with all this stuff when I want to put it all away? I already talked about a that little bag that you could put all of your ironing pads in, slip it in the closet, and your cutting mat. See how behind a cabinet works really well? You can just pull it out and put it on your table. And your sewing machine, if it did come with a cover, use it. And if you don't have a cover, I like to put maybe like a dish towel or a bath towel over the top so it doesn't accumulate dust in between projects. So along with your sewing machine, your iron, and your cutting mat, you're going to have other supplies. And I'm going to go over the essential sewing supplies that I recommend that you have. And most of them can fit in a tub like this. You're going to need pins or fabric clips. As I mention all the time, I love these fabric clips. They come in so handy. And you can put them in a little box or something. I like to have a pair of fabric scissors and a pair of paper scissors. And if you live in my house, you know that it's a big no-no to use my fabric scissors on paper. Some kind of measuring tape, a rotary cutter like I have mentioned before, and you'll want to have a few extra sewing needles on hand. I would recommend just buying some universal needles, 80 and some 90s, and you should be good to cover most fabrics. I really like these bins. I use them for my mini bolts, and I have a tutorial on showing you how to fold your fabric, organize your fabric, and I'll put the link in the description below for that. But these bins have lids so you can stack them. Fill them with stuff and then stack them. They even fit in a plastic drawer, which I'll show you. And as of late, I have come across this little gadget here, this little storage thing. I was pretty skeptical at first, thinking that it would hold things like this, but I love it. I keep it on my sewing table. It holds, like, you wouldn't think that this would be able to fit in here. The surface is really rubbery, so whatever you put in there, it just sticks. This is my turning stick. I recommend having one of those. I have even my lip gloss in there. A fabric pen of some kind comes in handy, and of course, our favorite seam ripper. Have that handy. So there really isn't a ton of things that you'll need to get sewing. You'll need thread, of course, and I recommend just getting the basic colors to start with. And one other thing that I'm going to share that I find would be helpful for limited space is to use these plastic drawers. This particular model has wheels on the bottom so that you can move it around. I have it under this cabinet. There's a lot of different drawers. There's a lot of different options out there. I just recently got a few more of these bins because I'm really liking and redoing how I store my smaller bolts of fabric, and these fit really nicely in there. I plan to fill up all three of these with my little fabric bins. Lots of options with these plastic drawers. You might think it's a lot of money at first, but if it's a way to keep things organized and it's cheaper than buying furniture that really doesn't work well, these I find work well. See, there is my other under the table sewing caddy. And here I pulled these out from my table so that you can see they're usually pushed back in further, but you can see how they fit really nicely under a table. And I shove them out of my way and flip them the other direction so that when I'm around the table I can get into them. But I just wanted to show you how well those work for storage. So I have most of the essential sewing supplies right here. So one more tip about sewing supplies and storing them is you're going to start accumulating patterns. And I found that this is, especially if you use a lot of printable PDF patterns, is to print them out And I have a whole tutorial showing you how to do this and how to organize your patterns, but I use a manila envelope. I glue the first page to the envelope, and then I store them in my cabinet, these cardboard magazine boxes. I think I got these at IKEA, but they also have them online, which I've seen and used. So that is a helpful tip on keeping your patterns organized. And when you want to go back to a sewing project, they're all right here ready for you to use again. I hope you found these tips helpful. No worries if you don't have a lot of space to sew. Don't let that keep you from doing something that brings you joy, and hopefully you can create a space that works for you. If you have some great comments about how you store your things in a small space, I'd love to hear it in the comments section below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure you do that. If you like my content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and click on the bell to make sure you're notified when I put new videos up. I have a lot of fun things coming. If you want to find other patterns, projects, other DIY things to do, check out my website, youmakeitsimple.com. Thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day. Have fun sewing, crafting, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.